neighbor. My name is Robert J. Ray. I'm a professional counseling therapist and trainer of trainers. I worked in a mental health prison for 11 years. I have fixed a lot of broken men and women in my 45 years as a counseling therapist. I was born in Maria, Mississippi and graduated from the famous T.J. Harris High School in 1963. T.J. Harris played Brinkley and Jim Hill in football and basketball every year before that stumbling block of integration dissembled the black race. I ran for mayor of Meridian in 2021. I ran for governor of Mississippi in 2019. I'm Robert J. Ray, the man with all of the answers, every Monday at 4 p.m. Watch me on WeBelieve.global. Hello, neighbors. My name is Robert J. Ray, and welcome to the first Robert J. Ray show, the man with all of the answers. When I was going to do this show, my people in my society asked me, say, well, what's your first subject going to be about, Ray? I said, well, I'm going to talk about the subject that I love to talk about most, me. They say that's a big ego you got there, Ray. And they're right. I do have a big ego, but I forgive myself for it. When I worked out at the little sex offender facility out there with the older boy, they asked me, say, well, Mr. Ray, how come you don't have a wife? I said, I can't really find a female that want to worship the ground that I walk on. So they laughed about it. You know, although I've been married before, I met my wife in a little town called Davenport, Iowa. And we was at an Ike and Tina Turner dance. And me and my best friend, Willie C., we had went up to Clinton, Iowa and picked up a couple of chicks at the Job Corps Center, and we brought them down to the Ike and Tina Turner show. Now, when I went in there, I looked and seen this lady. We took these chicks down there, but when I seen this girl, it's just love at first sight. I never did believe in love at first sight, but that's exactly what it was. And when we started going together, we went together for a couple of years, and it was just she and I dropped all my other address, threw my little black book away and everything, and it was just me and she. And when we left Illinois, we went to Michigan. That's where we settled down there. And we got married there in 1969. And then my son, he came along in 1970. And I was working for General Motors. And she was working at the nursing home when we first got started. And I bought us a house out in the suburbs, beautiful home out there. I think I was just 24 years old. But when you make General Motors money, you can buy almost anything, especially if you got good credit. And we lived good for about 7 years, and but all of the time I was drinking that alcohol. And if you don't believe it, alcohol will kill everything, any joy and your happiness. And after about 7 years of living with me, the alcohol had killed all of the love that she had for me. You hear me? It had just put the forest fire out. And once the forest fire's out, it can't be lit again. And so we decided to get a divorce. And so that's what we did. We got a divorce, but we did it in an orderly way. Instead of letting the lawyers tell us what you could get and what we got together, and we decided who would get what. I would keep my new car. I had a new Buick LeSabre right out of the showroom window, and she had a nice 69 Chevrolet Impala. Was excellent condition. So she would keep that. I would keep my car. She would keep the house, and I would, take my things out. And I had a favorite chair I liked, so I took that over to my apartment. So what we decided to do is we would still sleep together to get our sexual needs met. And I talked to my mentor about it, and he said that he didn't think that was a good idea. And I kind of laughed it off. I said, well, hey, that's where you have your cake and eat it too. And so I didn't pay too much attention to what he said. And so we were living that way. But every Saturday morning, I would go over and pick up my son and take him down to Insight to preteen counseling. And he would be down there, and then I would go back to the house where she was, and we would talk, get our sexual needs met. And I was just enjoying it. Hey, this is okay. And then one Saturday morning, I went over there, and people, let me tell you, I walk up in the house there, and here's a guy sitting up in there at my kitchen table in his pajamas. Boy, you talking about a kick in the head. It reminded me of the time when I was living in the country, and every winter we would kill a hog. And we would bring the hog out of the pen and bring him up to where we were going to slaughter the hog at. And one of the strong guys in the neighborhood had this sludge hammer. And the hog would be there, and he would draw back, and he would come down and hit that hog in the forehead and knock him out, and he would just be there, and he would be, and his feet would be just shaking. And I said, boy, I'm sure glad I'm a human being. And the hog would say, oink, oink. I didn't know what the hog meant then. But when I walked up in there and this guy was in his pajamas sitting at my table I had bought, my home I had bought, and my wife's ex-wife walking around in there with a smile on her face like she done enjoyed the night. Then I knew what the hog meant when he said, now it was my turn to get hit in the head. And it was almost like an out-of-the-body experience. Yeah, I mean, love, it's hard to figure out, but it's something that the whole world know about. And they know when you've been hurt. But it was like an out-of-body experience. He's in there, I'm trying to make small talk, and I'm kind of over here, out of the body, and I'm thinking about, should I kill everybody in the house or what? That's what you be thinking. Then you trying to make small talk. Hey, I want to introduce you to Eddie. I said, hey, Eddie. I didn't want to meet him, but I didn't want to act like I was jealous because actually we had got a divorce. It wasn't my place. But divorce, and you can move your body away, but you can't move your heart away. What I didn't realize is that although I was killing the love she had for me, the love I had for her was sturdy going on, sturdy building. It had had grew from the time I first laid eyes on it in the Tina Turner show. And there again, falling in love with the Ike and Tina Turner show. I should have known it was something then, the way Ike knocked Tina around. I should have knew something. It wasn't gonna last. But when I left the house there that morning, then I knew it was all over then. And we had said if you find somebody, then we'll move on. But my heart was still back there, and my mind was back there. And my son, he's in the car, and he's trying to talk to me. What you think we're going to talk about today, Dad? Down at, I don't know. Just wait till you get down. You really can't get it together. But over a period of time, I did develop a sense of calmness about it. I said, well, that's what we said we were going to do. We were going to do that. So after that was all over, I looked around and I said, well, what am I going to do now? So I let that go. Now, flashing back to when I was born in 1946, I was born in a hospital down in Meridian there. And I should have known that things wasn't going to get any better when I was born there. My mother vetted, she told me how it went that day. She said she was upstairs and all the light and all of the fresh air and everything. And then her and another white lady was up there, and they was both getting ready to have the babies. They had been up there. They had talked and talked about their pregnancies and babies. And then when they had the babies, then after they got me and her cleaned up, they rolled us down to the basement. And that made my mother mad as a wet hen. She was so angry until she said, she said she wasn't staying down there in the basement. She wasn't going to have her baby down there where the roaches and rats and mice and all this stuff was down there. And right away, I had came into a world that had considered me not good enough to be upstairs with the little white boy. I, and when my mother told me that, I said, well, I see what's happening now. I see that, hey, I'm a second class citizen. That's what they say we black people are. And then she wouldn't stay in there. She called my grandmother on my dad's side, and my dad, he had got killed in 1951, but he was in the army when I was born, and he got an honorable discharge in 1951. But my mother she wouldn't stay. She had my dad's mother come down there and get us, take over to her house, and then my great granddad, Mac Jackson, up in Kemper County, he was about the richest man in black man in Mississippi. He had bought land for 50 cents an acre, and he had bought land all over Winston, Kemper, Neshoba, Noxubee County, and all of that. And so he was rich, so he could just about get anything done he wanted done. So he had somebody to come down and pick my mother and me up and take us up in the country where my grandparents were there. And my grandparents had a 360-acre farm up there. And that's where I kind of grew up at, on that farm. They kept me away from all of the racism and the discrimination, so to speak. And this is where I grew up at. Yeah. And then we had a beautiful orchard out there. We had all kind of fruit out there. And so I kind of felt good about myself. I don't know what the little white boy had going for him down there, but I had a whole lot of stuff going for me. So I grew up there on that farm, eating, good, healthy food. And that's when I first became addicted. I became addicted to the cow's milk when you first milk it out of the udder. Every evening, when my grandmother milked the cow, I had to have me a glass of that warm milk out of there. And that I got my effect, and then I could go back to what I was doing. But every evening I had to have it. So right away I had an addictive nature, so to speak. And then when I started the school, I was a voracious reader. And I would read everything. And my grandfather, he was the only black man up in Kemper County, and our little community was known as Mount Salem, who had a newspaper delivered to him every day. It was a day late, but we still had it. He still had it delivered. And I read the newspaper, and I read the comic books, and I was a comic book fanatic. Every time we go to town, I'll go and get my Superman comic book and get my Archie. Reading the Archie magazine comic book let me know how white people live. I say, white people they live large, don't they? And those comic books taught me how to read. Superman comic books taught me to love law and order. Yeah. And that's where I started out in life, is reading. And reading those comic books and being out on the farm with all these farm animals and eating all of the healthy fruits and vegetables we had. And when I started the school, then we had to walk to school, but it was okay because everybody was happy to be going to school. And then you could see your friends, and it was kind of like Tina Turner sung that song, Nutbush City Limits. Yeah, we had a schoolhouse, outhouse, we had a gin house, church house, and we go to town on Saturday and go to church every Sunday. She sung that song just right. So many people understood exactly what she was saying. And so I started a school down in Mississippi. And we had a little school right out by the church there. And we was out there one day, and my best friend in time, Walter Lee, we was playing baseball at on resets, and he was batting, and I was behind the catcher doing the catching, and he swung around, and the bat swung around, and it hit me in the nose and broke my nose. Can you imagine that? And so the teacher got me and got my nose, plugged up, stopped up, and I walked home. And I told my grandmother what had happened. Then I had to walk over in the field where my grandfather was plowing and get him and say, hey, we got to go down to the hospital and get my nose stitched up. And that's how I started out in life. You know, I didn't hold no grudge against my best friend in time, Walter. And when I went downtown and got my nose stitched up, and that's the way it looks now. And this is a broke nose, but hey, it still does its job for me. Now, after I went to school in Mississippi, started down there, and I made the first grade. The second grade, I moved up to New Jersey. My mother had married a guy in Trenton, New Jersey. And when we come back, I'm going to share with you what happened to me there in Trenton, New Jersey. The Black American race is the only race in the USA who do not have connate rational minds to pass down to their offspring, which means the black baby boys being born today will not have their precious gem to compete with all the other races for their piece of the American dream. Why is it that other races can enter the USA with little or nothing and in a few years have more than the black race? The reason: no rational mind. You have to have a rational mind to operate a business and make it pay. The Black and White Race Rationale by Robert J. Ray. Available on Amazon. Get your copy today. You know, during my counseling training and counseling and therapy with people, we always ask them this question: who am I and why am I who I am? So once you establish that, you can kind of tell why your life goes like it does. I remember out in the country, when my mother came down to visit, she went somewhere, and when she came back, we was out in the country, and she came back and she looked kind of funny, and she was walking funny. I said, "Who is this?" And what had happened? She was drunk. I said, "Oh no, this can't happen." I said, "My friends were to see this. You know, I couldn't be proud like I am. You can't you can't ever do this again. This here just is not gonna work." My friends see that. I'd be the laughing stock of the community. Yeah, but I didn't know at the time that she couldn't help it herself. She had a disease called alcoholism herself. And so I expressed my feelings. I said, "No, you can't, I can't, none of my friends can't see you like that." So it went on, but it didn't stop her from drinking, but we kind of guarded her. Now, when I left and told my friends that I was going to New Jersey, they just, "Hey, you shouldn't go up there. You know they're gonna put you back a grade if you go up there." They always, and most of the time they did when students went to Mississippi, from Mississippi to another city, they would get put back a grade. But I couldn't understand that. I said I would think anywhere in the world, if I was in the second grade, I was gonna be just as smart as the next person was. So I ended up in New Jersey, met my new stepdad, and I was really pulled to him because he loved to fish. He taught me how to, taught me to love to fish. And we fished all of the time. We kept fish for the whole neighborhood on East Trenton Avenue, 322 East Trenton Avenue. That's where we lived at. And now that's almost 40, 50 years ago. So my mind is still pretty sharp. We was either digging baits or either we was fishing. And when I went up there, my two best friends, John and Willie. Willie lived next door to me, and then John lived next door to him. And we became the Three Musketeers. But John was a grade ahead of me and Willie, and he would always, when we come down to making a decision, he would always bring it up in our face. "Hey, I'm the oldest. I'm the one is in the higher grade. So y'all listen to me." And so we started the school that year in second grade. And I was anxious because I was waiting for them to come get me and try to put me back in the first grade. But lo and behold, Miss Holly, I never will forget her because she did me a solid. Bird, my friend Willie, and a little white girl named Kathleen and myself, we would always read to the other kids in the class. And this is second grade, and I would read, the little Kathleen would read some, and then Willie would read. And we did that the whole year. And so we finished that school year up, and then we was getting ready to go to the third grade. Columbus Elementary School, that's where it was, Columbus Elementary School. And so we went back up there to start the third grade, and we was in another teacher's room, and we look up, and here come Miss Holly. You know, we were glad to see her, Miss Holly. She came in the room, got Willie, Kathleen, and myself, and told us to come with her. And she took us up, and they put us in the fourth grade. You hear me? I didn't ever have to go through the third grade. I skipped the third grade. That's why I say I was a genius. Whenever I was in high school and everybody would talk about who was the smartest, I would always say, hey, it's got to be me. I said, I ain't have to go to third grade. I skipped that. I'm the genius around here. I would never let them live that down either. But so I skipped a grade. Instead of being put back a grade, they put me up a grade. And so we were living there on East Trenton Avenue. And one day, my mother, she still liked to drink, and she went out down to the bar. We had a bar around the corner there, and the way it happened, she got with two guys, two dudes around there, and they was drinking together, and they got her drunk and took her to New York City. Now, you talking about snatching the life right out of me. I didn't even want to go on. Where is my mother at? Where? And she stayed missing for about 2 days until she happened to call, and I got sober enough to call, but those 2 days, my friend Willie and John, they just had to stick by me. Oh, they was just saying, hey, she gonna be back. He gonna be back. And I didn't smile during that whole time. I mean, that zapped me. And see, and this is what's so bad about your parents being addicted, because they do things like this to their children, and they'll never forget that. They'll never get over that. Even though she came back, I think that affected me for a long time, because then whenever she went anywhere, then I was always tense and anxious about, is she gonna come back? That kind of weight should have been put on a little kid, but it was put on me. That's just part of how I was living at the time. So all of this time she was still drinking, and then the affair with her husband was going bad because the alcohol was getting the best of her at this back in time. And so they split, and we was back in Mississippi in 1959. And I came back and a grade ahead of some of my friends, and they was saying, what happened? You didn't get put back? I said, no. I say, I'm a genius. I was put, I didn't have to go through the third grade. And so when I started back down to Preston, they brought the books in, and they had the same books that we had in Trenton, New Jersey school. They had those books, bringing them back in there to the fourth grade. And I was saying, what? I say, these books we had last year in the fourth grade. So I went home and told my grandparents about it, and my grandfather said, hey, don't make any waves, just go along with it, go through it again, you get something else out of it. And then that's when I knew that the white supremacists down here in Mississippi was keeping the blacks back by giving them the second-hand books, the books that had been used by the white kids last year. then they take them over and give them to the black kids. So we learning stuff that the white kids already knew from last year. And I know this is the genuine truth because when I was in the Mississippi Writers Guild and president of the Mississippi Writers Guild, so a lady in there told me that was her job every summer, was to go down and gather up the books that the white school have used that year and take them so that take them to the black school. And this is what they did. And this is what we did. And I resented that for a long time. I really did. So after this, I got down to T.J. Harris. That's why I went to the 10th grade at. I went to 10th, 11th, and 12th at T.J. Harris. And that's why I really enjoyed my high school years, my best friends in time, and all of the kids that was in that segregated school. I think you seen some of it when on my commercial, on my entry. All of those kids were smart. I mean, they had to learn things, and our teachers always told us that, hey, we were going to have to compete with the white kids out there, but you could do it. If you applied yourself, you could do that. And that's what we always thought. So everybody was somebody when the school was segregated. And we learned, and everybody was learning. We didn't have, I think out of the whole 3 years we went there, I don't think anybody had a fight. Didn't anyone get suspended? Because we went to school, if you wasn't really interested in reading and writing, then you could go out and take auto mechanics. You could go out and become a carpenter. We had several things there that you could become there in high school. And that's the way the segregated school was. And they taught us how to do things there. And when we graduated in 1963, everybody could read. I mean, these kids were like, they were adults. They was ready to go out in the world. And just about everybody in my graduating class was successful. Nobody went to prison. Everybody went out into the world and married and had families and bought cars and homes and things like this. And you look now, these kids down at the high school, they don't have a clue as to how they're gonna live their life or how they're gonna make it in there. And the majority, a lot of them end up in prison even before they get out of high school. And now, how can the white supremacists feel like this was the best thing to do? I know you would eventually have to be integrated because I went to an integrated school in Trenton, New Jersey. The little white girl Kathleen, we had a whole, it was half and half white, but nobody even thought about the color thing. Everybody was trying to have fun and learn. But here in Mississippi, it was a big deal. Now we're going to go and integrate the school. I think when I graduated segregated school, it was really something special. Everybody was ready to go to college. They was ready to go to the service, armed service, and they was ready to go to work. The ones that had learned the auto mechanics, they started right out working and making money and building houses. And this is how we came up. And this is how come I am who I am, because I've seen this. And I worked hard on the farm. And so when I went to work for AC Spark Plugs in Michigan, that was a piece of cake because we had worked in the field. We would go to the field early in the morning before the sun rise, and we would work and then go eat dinner, and then we'd come back and work to sundown. So this is the way I had been brought up. So it was a sense that I would be able to go out in the world and do something good. And my uncle, my favorite Uncle Frank, he told me, say, now, Sonny, they called me Sonny. Now, Sonny, what you do, you keep your sharp-looking car, and you keep you some sharp clothes, and keep you some cash money in your pocket, and hey, you'll be able to always pick up a chick anywhere. And and I said that was his philosophy, and that's the philosophy that I was living by when I met my first wife. I had a Cadillac, a Delta, 65 Delta 88 black on black Cadillac, not Cadillac, but a Oldsmobile. And I had a pot in money. I was working for John Deere Plow Works, and you know they sell those tractors, so they was paying good money. And I kept sharp clothes. I kept a clothing account, and I would have that clothing everywhere I go. I would attract females, and I used to remember that when I was growing up, and older teenage girls would go out and they would meet some guy, and they would come back and they would tell their mama, "Mama, I met somebody," and they would always ask them, "Girl, child, has he got a car?" And I would always wonder. I say, what difference does it make if he got a car now? I say, what's a car gonna do? The car can't love you or make you happy. But this is what they always did. But I guess the rationale was that if he had a car, then he was doing pretty good, because back in the 50s, and when I was coming up, people didn't have automobiles. Black people didn't have automobiles that much. You was lucky if you had a truck. But my grandparents, they had a truck, and they had a tractor, and I learned how to drive at 4 years old, and so we was always kind of well-to-do black people. We was the first one had a television back in Mount Salem. So whenever we come back, I'm gonna share with you some more things about myself, and I may even share some things that'll do you people some good. Y'all niggas was born into a faith-only religion. Baptist, Methodist, Holiness, or Catholic. But y'all have one thing in common, believing that faith only will save you. Y'all were taught to believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, and y'all bought into it without questioning whether it was genuinely true or not, just because your parents introduced you into it. But don't blame them so much as the false preachers who preach this false Nicene Council 325 AD doctrine. The Nigger's Holy Bible by Robert J. Ray, available on Amazon. Get your copy today. I got to share something with you about my mentor. I mean, he's the one that got me where I can say that I have all of the answers, because that's what they had when I was there. When I went down there for my alcoholism disease, the plant manager over there at AC Spot where I was working at, he sent me down there. And when I got down there, I looked and they was doing a session called The Symptoms and Phases of the Disease Alcoholism. I didn't even know there was no disease. I knew my mother had something. I knew the members of our family had something, but I didn't know what it was. So and it's a hereditary disease, people. Alcoholism and drug addiction, all of these things is mostly hereditary from your parents. Whatever disease they had, whatever addictions they had, whatever loves they had, they passed that right down to the offspring. So my mentor was Ronald and his wife Cynthia. Those are my counseling therapists. And I went through that training, and it takes a long time to get over these addictions. But when I went out there, I never drank anymore, because I was in counseling and therapy with them for a year. And he became my counselor and my mentor. About halfway through training, he said, "Well, Robert, why don't you become a alcohol and drug counselor?" I said, "What?" I said, I don't know about getting up in front of people trying to tell them how to live their life like y'all doing. I said, because I'm just a country boy. I come from the country. I talk country. I can't even speak really good English and stuff like that. He said, "Hey, I'll teach you all of that." So I went home and told my wife what Ron had said about being a counselor, And she just chuckled. That was the funniest thing she ever heard. And so she said, "You gonna be a counselor? You gonna get people off of alcohol?" And it was just so funny to her, you know. And it really got me into my feelings. I said, "Well, look here." So I was determined. So I went back and told Ron, I go to train. So after I got out of for my own addiction, never went back to drinking again. Hadn't had a drop of alcohol since April of 1975. Never went back on alcohol. Never took another drop. And that's part of why I'm healthy as I am now, because alcohol would take you down through there. And so I got in training with my mentor Ron, and he made me his protege for some reason or another. And everybody wondered why he chose me. And I guess that was his way of giving back to the black race. He made me his little black guy, his protege. And while I was in training to become a counselor at the organism, he came down with acute leukemia. And they didn't have any cure for that. And I was just as angry because I was thinking that if he dies, why would this man die? He was like a similitude of Jesus Christ. I know y'all don't know what that means, but it's some people come through the world and they behave and they affect people just like Jesus did. Because Jesus was astonishing. What he taught his disciples and the way he healed people, he healed them physically and he healed them spiritually and mentally. And that's what my mentor Ron was doing. And he had healed black people, white people, all of them, executives out at General Motors that were about ready to lose their job, lose all that money. And they came to the organism and he would get them back in order. And I was being trained to do that same thing. And about halfway through the training, he came down with this acute leukemia. And they took him down to Ann Arbor, where Ann Arbor Hospital, and they had the best treatment for leukemia, but they couldn't cure the acute leukemia. It was just too drastic, and it just tore his body up. And here's a man would be running 4 miles a day and things like that. And I've went out there and ran around that 4 mile with him, and I'd be coming in and I'd run with him for as I can. I just tell him to go ahead, and then I would end up back at the organism. He done took a shower and everything by the time I get back there. And here he was getting ready to die. And me and God, we couldn't reconcile that. I was saying, now why would you take a man like this when you got all these other losers out here that not doing anything for anybody? And I was just angry with God. But then one Sunday, Cynthia came back in. She had went to see Ron that, and he was going down slow, but he wasn't going to make it. And she came in the training room and she told us that Ron, and she had asked Ron, say, "What's happening to us, Ron? What's happening to us? You know, why is this happening to us?" And she said, Ron looked at her and said, outside of the fact that he was dying, things couldn't be better for us. And that just knocked me out of control. I said, how can a man with everything that he had coming, $1 billion process, that's what he would make, and he would probably have been the richest man in the world if he had lived. And he said, outside of the fact that he was dying, things couldn't be better for him. Now, how can you say that? When you got so many people just kicking and screaming out, he wasn't trying to tell the doctors to try to see what's the latest stuff out. He just took his death gracefully. He died with dignity. And he changed so many people's lives up there at the hospital while he was up there. They had a routine you had to do if you was terminally ill. It was just blowing smoke up your butt. But you would have to be weighed. You would have to get up and they would shower you, and little routine stuff you would have to do. And when the nurses saw him, and he had all these sores on his body that leukemia was on, and the nurses they didn't really want to get him up and stuff, and he would make them get him up and shower him and get him on a new gown or whatever, and make him go do everything they supposed to do with him, and then put him back to bed. And they hated him for that, but they came to learn, and he told them, say that this is your job. You know, just because I may be dying don't mean that you don't do your job now. And then the doctors even. He made them grow into a higher degree. His doctor, they was coming around to check on him every day until he got to the point where he was terminal. And they didn't want to see what they couldn't cure. They couldn't cure. If they couldn't cure you, they would just ignore you. And Ron sent word for him to come down there, to come through there. And at this time, they had some intern doctors there at the hospital. And they would be walking through with the doctor, and he would take them in the room. But they had been passing Ron's room every day. They wouldn't take him in the room. They shut his door, and they would just bypass him. And so he sent for the head nurse. And he told the head nurse, he said, why the doctor stopped coming to see me? And she gave him a bunch of nonsense stuff. And he said, well, hey, you tell him I want to see him, stop by here and see me. He said, I'm paying him, ain't I? And she went and told the doctor what he said. And the doctor was reluctant to go through there, but he said, well, since I got these interns with me, I just stopped by there and to humor him, to humor Ron. So he stopped by there with his interns, about 7 of them, you know, even some females. They was becoming doctors then. And this was in 76, I think it was, yeah, 76. And he brought the interns in, and they got around the bed, and he was asking Ron how was he and everything. And Ron was nodding because he couldn't hardly talk. He had to talk like, you know, because he had the canker sores in his mouth also. And so he asked one of the interns, I think one of the girls, he said, you want to be a doctor, huh? Oh, she said, oh, yes. Yeah. So he swept up his gown, and they saw all them canker sores and how it was eating up. Said, what would you do about this? And she just she fainted. You know, some of them almost was throwing up, and they just got the hell out of there. And the doctor wanted to admonish Ron for doing that. Say, why did you do that? And Ron told him, say, they want to be doctors, don't they? And this is the kind of individual he was. Even though he was dying, he was still training. He was still giving people counseling and therapy and on the way out. And this is just the way he was. And he had taught me that, hey, everybody's ass is up for grabs. And that's what he taught them doctors. Say, just because you can't cure everybody. And one night, the doctor came back down there to talk to him. And the doctor told the nurse he didn't even know why he came back down there. But some took him down there to Ron's room, and he walked in there, and Ron was waiting for him almost. And he was asking him, and Ron counseled him, and he told him, say, when people are dying, that's when they need you the most. They don't look for you to cure every disease. People know that's not possible. And if it's their time, they want you to come back down there and maybe hold their hand, maybe give them a little encouragement, maybe confess that I'm not going to be able, we've done everything we can do for you, and we can't do anything else. But when you ignore people, it hurt their feelings. It make them feel worthless then. And they are really sad about going on out. But if you come down there and you come in and talk to them and give them some energy and give them some encouragement, they'll be able to take dying better. And he counseled with that doctor up until he died. And that doctor became one of the best doctors that they had down there in Ann Arbor because of what Ron shared with him. And Ron did this all the way out. And the nurses, they became better. No, he told them, say, look, if you're supposed to do something with a patient, do that. That's your job. You gotta do your job honestly, justly, and sincerely. It doesn't matter who it is. If that's what you want to do, if you claim to be a nurse, you gotta do that. And those nurses, hey, when Ron died, the doctors and all the nurses and all of them was crying. You hear me? They were crying. You know, doctors and nurses, doctors don't cry when somebody died. But when Ron died, all of the doctors that knew him and had heard about him and the nurses up at the nurses station, they just actually cried. And Cynthia was down there when it happened, and she told us they were just crying, and it was just the saddest occasion when Ron died down there. And she was down there with him. The last day he died, she went down there, and he said he wanted to make love to her again. He couldn't hardly move. He said he wanted to make love to her for one last time. And Cynthia got up and laid on top of him, and I guess they made love for one last time. And the head nurse came in, and she caught him, and she went back out in a huff, and she went back down there, and the nurses in the station said, "What's wrong?" You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe what she's doing down there to that sick man. And but this is what Ron wanted. He loved Cynthia, and he loved making love to Cynthia, and that's what he wanted to do. And after that, when Cynthia come back out of the room, Ron had slipped on into the next world. I'll share some more with you when you come back. Senator James Oliver Eastland, he headed up the U.S. Judiciary Department for many years, the highest judiciary committee of the United States of America. He was my guidance, my superior, protector, and mentor. He did show me how the slick communist Jews was coming into Mississippi and corrupting our blacks, who were only a few generations past being ignorant slaves. Slaves whom had been long supported with home, food, and upkeep until a war released them from so-called slavery into poverty, homelessness, and without assistance. We grew up together. Killer Killing by Larry Ellis. Available on Amazon. Get your copy today. When Ron passed away, they had a big, not a funeral, but a memorial for him. And it was so many people. We had it at this place called the Auditorium at Hurley Hospital. Huge place. And that place was almost packed for this little Ron. And it was amazing. It was doctors, it was executives, it was people that he had got in order over the years. The 3 years, and all he had was 3 years, just like Jesus did. He had 3 years to do his thing, and he had to touch so many people in those 3 years, and they were there at that memorial. But he had such an impression on me until he he taught me to have confidence in myself. He taught me how to get up and give counseling therapy to these professors and these lawyers and doctors who thought they knew everything, and they resented taking getting that therapy and counseling from a little old black man, a little black guy like me, and they resented. But when it was all over, they would come up to me and they would thank me, say, "Hey, you saved my life," and it was, but it just wasn't me. It was the process coming through me. And that's what I do to my clients. I give them the process, and it belongs to them now. They can go out. The hundreds of men that I got recovered and got fixed out at the mental health prison, when they got that process, I told them it's yours. You do what you can do with it. You go out and be successful with it. It belongs to you now. And they went out and they were successful. They didn't come back to prison. Hey, neighbors, listen. If you got somebody in prison and they get out on probation, just know that they are on their way back. The list of do's and don'ts that they give a person when he comes out of prison, he can't sustain those. There's no way he can do them. And he ended up going back to prison, and then he got to still do all of the time that he was going to do. But the individuals that I took through, I call it the wrong Cornwell process, they did not come back to prison. They didn't. Any of them come back. But these private prisons, they don't want that. They want you to come back. And that's what they was trying to get these prisoners to do. When they gave these list of do's and don'ts, they knew that these black guys wasn't going to be able to uphold that. They knew it. That way they would always keep those prisoners coming back in a cycle. Some would come in, some would go out. Then these ones that go out, they'll be coming back, and they would say, hey, the bottom line is that as long as we keep these black guys coming back to prison, hey, we'll make those billions of dollars. And I tried to stop that, and they saw that my process was stopping this. They fired me. They got me out. They tried to ruin my life. They tried to say I was assaulted a fellow employee out there. I had to go all the way to the United States Supreme Court to try to get justice, and still didn't get it. But I took it all the way to the Supreme Court. I mean, I did it. But who do you know that had a simple assault charge and took it all the way to the United States Supreme Court? I did, because Ron wouldn't have expected anything less than me, less than that. He would have told me, everybody's ass is up for grabs. Go for it. Although the judges, they wouldn't find in my favor. Although we had a video, I had a video. Listen to this, neighbor. I had a video that showed that I didn't assault this individual. They got cameras in the hall. They had a video that showed that I didn't assault this individual. Do you know that the judges would not even allow that to come in? They wouldn't even look at it. And I took it down up to the Supreme Court of Mississippi, took it down to New Orleans, that court down there. They always found against me. And the lawyer that I had writing up those briefs, he was an expert in it. He just laid it out to him that this wasn't Ray. Ray didn't do this. But they went on anyway, and I had to take it to the United States Supreme Court. Now that should go down in history. That, hey, a black man in Mississippi with a simple assault charge had to take his case all the way. They wouldn't give me my day in court, because if they'd have gave me my day in court, I would have won the case, because once they'd have seen it. But they had 10 people that came out of the prison that they bribed to get up on the stand and perjure themselves and say, I assaulted this guy. And they did, 10 of them. And all of these individuals is having problems. Some of them have died already. Even the prosecutor that prosecuted me, he's dead already. The guy went out jogging, had a heart attack. See, all of these people, when you get up and do stuff like that, you victimizing yourself when you do it. But they wouldn't let me have my day in court, because they knew they would have to come back and prosecute all of these people that committed perjury on the stand when they got up and lied that I assaulted somebody. Now, what I want you to do now is I'm 75 years old. I don't have any illnesses. This is one of the reasons I don't have any illnesses, because I follow Jethro Close back to Eden. The things in this book here, he was curing people of cancer, neighbors, back in the 20s. Yeah, people come to him with cancer, and the doctor be done told him that, hey, go home and get your will and get your stuff set right. And then they would hear about Jethro Close, and they would say, well, go down there and try Jethro Close. And he would get them, cure them, get them back in order, and they would be going back to work and back into their life. And he was doing this, and he did this all for years and years. Now, the Claus family, they gave me special permission to promote this book, use it any way I wanted to use it. Anything in that book I wanted to use, I could use. And I use a lot of things out of this book to cure people. I've cured people of cancer. My mother, I kept her alive 20 years with cancer. She started out with breast cancer. And I kept her alive 20 years. She ended up having 4 cancers before she died. And up until the last 6 months, she was working. She was going sitting with people like they do today, sitting with people. And then I came in one day and she said, Sonny, and that's what they call my family. She said, would you be really sad if I stopped using everything? And I say, no. I say, she kind of knocked me out of control, but I said, okay. I said, okay. I mean, you took everything I brought to you, and you see, and it worked for you, and you live way longer than you would live going to see these white supremacist doctors. And so she stopped taking everything, and got into hospice, and we stayed over there, and we were with her. And matter of fact, the morning that she died, we went over there, me and my brother and my sister, and her sister, her only sister. We was over there, and she took her last breath over there, and we stayed there until the angels came. See, when people die, if you stay there at their head and at their foot, if you stay there, and if you can stay there with them for about an hour or so, then you'll smell a real sweet fragrance that lets you know that the angels are with that dead person now, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And we stayed there, and my brother, he filmed it, and they smelled that fragrant odor that came in that room. The angels were there. They didn't believe me when I told them that would happen, but it did happen. And that was a beautiful death and dying that my mother Vettis went through. And I had used a lot of stuff out of this and a lot of other stuff that I had became aware of, because I searched for stuff to help people's health. The reason that the black race is so unhealthy is because they eat everything that the Food and Drug Administration put out there. Listen, neighbor, the Food and Drug Administration, they don't care about you. They don't care about your health. They let all of these things come on the market that's harmful to you and your family. And y'all just eat it up. And y'all think they care about you. But the Food and Drug Administration do not care about you. They put all of these things. This is what the Food and Drug Administration do. I know you love your meat. When you go to these greasy spoons and these fast food places and get your big burger, greasy burger and stuff like that, and you eat that meat, you think that meat is okay. But this is the way the meat inspectors inspect your meat. And when I read it and when I said, I thought that was the most craziest thing you could do. Now, the meat inspectors, they can't look directly at the meat to see if anything is wrong with it. They have to look at a mirror and look at the meat back that way. And you can imagine how foggy the windows are and everything. And they're not picking up on the meat and what's wrong with it and what it should be. And this is the way. How about that? How about that, neighbor? Would you want your inspector inspecting the meat by not looking directly at it, but looking at a mirror and the meat's back there. This is what the Food and Drug Administration do. All of this stuff that's on the market, the Food and Drug Administration are the biggest whores in America. They can be bought for little or nothing. All of these rich people that put all of these drugs on the market, and you think they're okay, they're not. Because what the pharmaceutical companies do, they can put out a drug, they know it's going to kill a lot of people. But what they do, if they can kill a lot of people and get a lawsuit and sell a lawsuit for $260 million, and people be saying, oh, they done punished them. They got to pay $260 million. That'll teach them a lesson. But that doesn't teach them a lesson, the pharmaceutical company, because although they killed all those people, and some of them might have been your relatives and neighbors, they made $360 billion by selling you this crap and this poison stuff. So all I'm asking you to do is look it up for yourself. People, start paying attention to what you're eating. And don't let your family just eat. There's so many obese people in Mississippi. And I take people down to the grocery stores, and they be going in there buying that meat. I shop at the Whole Foods store. Everything, just about everything in there is healthy for you. And that's what I do. That's why I can live to be 75 and not have any health issues, nothing. No headaches, no anything. And my bone density is like that of a 40-year-old. And my blood oxygen, my 16-year-old neighbor, his was 96 or 97, and mine was just 1 degree behind his. See, that's how healthy I am. And it's all because of who I am and why I am who I am. Now, that's all I have to share with you on this show, but be sure to come back to my next show. That's all I have to share with you, and I'm anxious to move on. Hello, neighbor. My name is Robert J. Ray. I'm a professional counselor and therapist and trainer of trainers. I worked in a mental health prison for 11 years. I have fixed a lot of broken men and women in my 45 years as a counselor and therapist. I was born in Meridian, Mississippi, and graduated from the famous T.J. Harris High School in 1963. T.J. Harris played Brinkley and Jim Hill in football and basketball every year before that stumbling block of integration dissembled the black race. I ran for mayor of Meridian in 2021. I ran for governor of Mississippi in 2019. I'm Robert J. Ray, the man with all of the answers, every Monday at 4 p.m. Watch me on